Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. Connecticut prosecutors refuse to retry Michael Skakel.
Michael really was convicted because of a media lynch mob.
His relative, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., discusses the case and a dissenting judge's criticism of his own family.
A hearing for actor Danny Masterson, accused of multiple rapes, and an NBA player accused of striking his girlfriend.
Plus, we break down new body camera video in the police shooting of a boyfriend and girlfriend. Law and Crime Daily covers court cases from coast to coast.
And welcome everybody to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Aaron Keller along with Brian Buckmeyer and Terry Austin. Connecticut prosecutors have announced they will not retry Michael Skakel, the so-called Kennedy cousin convicted by a jury of murdering 15-year-old Martha Moxley in 1975. In 2018, the Connecticut Supreme Court overturned Skakel's 2002 conviction, saying Skakel's defense attorney did not properly present alibi testimony at trial. Now prosecutors say they won't try the case a second time because too much time has passed and some witnesses are dead. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is Michael Skakel's cousin. I spoke with him a short time ago about the case. He says prosecutors secured the original conviction through the help of a doctored video which took the defendant's words out of context. He also says Skakel did not benefit from his connections to the Kennedys. To the contrary, he says Skakel was burdened, perhaps even targeted, because of his family. Prosecutors have said that part of the reason they're not trying this case again is because 17 of their 51 potential witnesses have died, and they don't believe they can try the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Is that a sufficient explanation, in your opinion, as to why this case shouldn't go forward?
No, and it's not a credible explanation because they were fighting 18 months ago to go to the Supreme Court for the right to try it again, or for the right to have Michael continue to be convicted. So they've been fighting to try this case. They've refused for 6 years since he was released to make an announcement about whether or not they were going to drop the case. They tried this case before, by the way, with dead witnesses. So basically, they have no evidence left to convict Michael Skakel. And he has a very, very convincing third-party culpability defense where he can point to somebody else and say, here are the guys who actually did the murder, and we have a full confession from one of them.
So this is why you said in the New York Times the other day that you would have, quote, made a mockery of prosecutors if they tried this case again. It sounds like you're making an opening statement here.
Well, no, there's a lot of, believe me, if I was making the opening statement, it would go on for hours. But those are just some of the pieces of evidence that, I think the new prosecutor, Mr. Colangelo, actually took a fresh look at this case and said, why do I want to tar my career and tar my reputation by bringing a case against an innocent man?
Tell me about your relationship with Michael Skakel. Why is this case involving him so important to you?
Well, it was only important to me because I knew he was innocent. Actually, at the time that I wrote my article for the Atlantic Monthly and the time I wrote my book, my relationship with Michael was very rocky at that time. And Michael was angry at me and wasn't talking to me. So I had no reason. It wasn't. Listen, I love Michael Skakel, and he played a really key part in my life during my early sobriety. He got sober a year before I did. He's incredibly courageous and incredibly just a good person and very devout. And he and extraordinarily honest. But he also, he had a hard life. He was virtually tortured for 2 years at Ilan, which was this kind of reformatory where he was sent as a kid. And he's mistrustful of people. And unfortunately, I fell into that net during a certain time of, after his conviction. He blamed everybody, including members of my family. And I was, so I did not have a good relationship with him at that time. But I'd known him And I'd known him intimately for many years, and I knew that he did not commit this crime.
I want to read a line from the dissent from the Connecticut Supreme Court opinion, which ultimately flipped the conviction. It complained that other people in Connecticut who don't have your family's financial resources, social standing, even ethnicity, and connections to a political dynasty wouldn't have gotten the same decision that Michael Skakel got from the majority of the court in flipping the conviction. What's your response to that criticism of your family from the dissent on the Connecticut Supreme Court?
I don't think Michael Skakel, I mean, I know for a fact Michael Skakel would have never been convicted if they could not have made a connection to the Kennedy family. And of course, Michael Skakel, who was, repeatedly and habitually called Kennedy cousin in the press, has no Kennedy blood in him. Michael really was convicted because of a media lynch mob. And that, listen, Black kids and poor people get convicted all the time in this country for crimes they didn't commit. And that is a documented truth. We know that a lot because of the Innocence Project. Prosecutors have an easy job convicting people, even innocent people. And Michael, if they have a reason to do it, they can do it. And Michael was, turned into kind of a villain by the press. And of course, because he's under indictment, he can't speak in his own defense. And but it's clear that Michael would have never been indicted. He would have never been convicted if it had not been for his connection to my family. But, I'm not disagreeing with the judge that it's easier to be rich in this country. And it's better to be rich normally if you're in the justice system than it is to be poor.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., appreciate your time here on the Law and Crime Network.
Thanks for having me.
And still ahead here on Law and Crime Daily, our assessment of the Michael Skakel case, plus legal issues surrounding actress Lori Loughlin, actor Johnny Depp, and NBA player Terrence Davis. And later on in our broadcast, a new series of videos shows what happened and what did not happen when police opened fire on a boyfriend and girlfriend, killing one of them. Those and other reports when Law and Crime Daily continues. Hey, Brian and Terry, I want to bring you into this discussion about the Michael Skakel case. We know prosecutors aren't moving forward with a second trial after the Supreme Court flipped the conviction. Terry, let's talk about the facts of the case, though. We had a conviction. Michael Skakel was convicted of this crime by a jury, and some of the evidence was a golf club that was found near the victim's body, and the exact type and size and make of golf club was missing from the defendant's home.
You know what, Aaron? That's a lot of circumstantial evidence. And the fact that he lied about his alibi, the fact there are no other suspects, and the fact that they were all out together that evening, I really think that it all points to him. And, obviously he had a great defense. He had great attorneys. It helped him to get the conviction overturned. But, at this point, I kind of understand why the family doesn't want to go through this again, especially since the prosecution has lost 17 of the 51 witnesses, and they have no additional evidence.
And Brian, one of the complaints that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. made is, look, the whole reason that my relative was targeted is because Mark Fuhrman, of O.J. Simpson fame, or infamy, we should say, decided to dig into the case and point the finger at him. People don't really want Mark Fuhrman running around pointing the finger at them.
Yeah, but Mark Fuhrman can point a finger at me, he can point a finger at you, can point a finger at Terry. The difference is there's going to be no evidence to support a murder, at least for me. I'm not sure about you two. But
not against me either.
Sure, point the finger, but if the prosecution can find the evidence to drive that case, then they're allowed to continue.
So exactly, and here what we had is the court ultimately said that the defense work in the first trial didn't dig into the alibis enough. So it was a scathing opinion pointed at the trial counsel in the original case. It's a case we could talk about for hours, but we've got to move on to our next report now. A judge has allowed one of the stars of That 70s Show to push back his arraignment on sex crimes charges. Danny Masterson is accused of forcibly raping 3 women at his home in separate incidents between 2001 and 2003. Masterson had the right to be arraigned today, but the defense and the prosecution agreed to reset the date for that arraignment to January 6th. Part of the reason is because the state hasn't handed some key evidence over to the defense for inspection.
My understanding is that the people have yet to produce all of the discovery to the defendant. Is that correct?
Well, there is a certain portion of discovery that has already been turned over, but there's some additional discovery that needs to be provided, yes.
And Mr. Mesler, you need that before the preliminary hearing. Is that correct?
Yes, we do, Your Honor.
All right. So you're prepared to enter a time waiver on the arraignment?
Yes, Your Honor.
What date are you choosing?
With your permission, Your Honor, the parties have agreed to January 6th, 2021.
Time waiver is taken for Mr. Masterson for the arraignment to January 6, 2021, 09.
Thank you very much, Your
Thank you,
Honor.
Your Honor.
Just one of the high-profile cases making headlines. Law&Crime's Brian Buckmeyer, of course, here with several other celebrity legal matters to report, including the case involving actress Lori Loughlin. Brian.
Yeah, Aaron, so my generation knew her as Aunt Becky, but now Loughlin is another inmate at the federal prison in California. Loughlin is going to be reporting to a federal prison named Dublin Correctional Institution on Friday, where she's now serving her 2-month sentence for her role in the college admissions scandal. Loughlin and her fashion husband, Massimo Giannulli, pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges over the summer. They admitted to paying $500,000 to get their daughter into college. Giannulli will start serving his 5-month sentence on November 19th. Actor Johnny Depp lost his libel case against a British tabloid that called him, quote, a wife beater for his alleged acts towards ex-wife Amber Heard. Depp sued the Sun and admitted he had drug and alcohol problems, but said he wasn't violent with his ex-wife. Lawyers for the Sun argued photos, recordings, and Depp's own text messages showed he beat Heard. She also testified Depp threatened to kill her several times. The United Kingdom's High Court sided with the tabloid and ruled the claims proved to be substantially true. Toronto Raptors guard Terrence Davis has been arrested in Manhattan for allegedly assaulting his girlfriend. According to the NYPD, Davis faces assault and criminal mischief charges for striking the woman, grabbing her phone, and breaking its screen. The spokesperson for the Toronto Raptors said they are aware of the reports and are seeking more information.
Thanks a lot, Brian. The 17-year-old accused of murdering 2 people during protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin, is back in that state to face charges. A judge in Lake County, Illinois, ordered Kyle Rittenhouse to be extradited last Friday. He was taken to Wisconsin that very night. Rittenhouse faces 6 charges, including intentional homicide, in the deaths of 2 men during unrest sparked by the police shooting of Jacob Blake over the summer. Rittenhouse's lawyer tweeted he strongly disagreed with the judge's decision to extradite Rittenhouse. John Pierce said Kyle will be set free and cleared of all charges in his opinion. Rittenhouse faces life in prison if he is convicted. We're going to take a closer look now at body camera video of a police shooting in Waukegan, Illinois. Marcellus Sinnett was shot and killed after a brief chase. His girlfriend, Tafara Williams, was shot and survived. Dashcam video shows an officer chasing the two. Here's the scene from several angles.
Southbound on MLK, passing south. They're going west on Helm Hose. They just 50. Get it! I was right behind you. You almost tried to run me over. I'm good. I don't know about the car, man. Hey, are you okay? I did. You did? They almost ran me over.
No, I didn't. I was backing up.
And when we come back, the events which led up to that police shooting, plus our analysis. And later on, a triple murder trial involving a pro baseball player who authorities say was running out of professional luck. Did anger over a contract lead him to kill? Now back to the police shooting, which left a boyfriend dead and his girlfriend injured in Waukegan, Illinois. Before the break, we showed you how it ended. Here now is how it started, with an officer trying to take the boyfriend into custody on a warrant.
You got in an accident, right? What's your name? Huh? King? Because you were Stinnett. I thought you were one of the Stinnett kids, right? Right? Yeah. What's your first name? What's your first name? For what? You're Marcellus, right? Yeah, for what? Yeah, you're under arrest, man. Why? Because I said. No, dude. Hey, come on, show me the hands, pal. I ain't playing with you because I know you. Marcellus, you're under arrest. Because you got a warrant. I got Marcellus. Here. He's not in there. Record, that's recording too. Marcellus, you're under arrest, pal. 10-4, 3250 direction. Whether you know. You ain't coming out. Hey! Hey, they just ran me over.
Okay, so Brian, we've talked about a shorter version of some of those clips in a previous broadcast, but does seeing more of the video change any of your thoughts on whether the officer was ultimately justified in pulling the trigger later on?
Somewhat, because as you see in that last bit, and I was kind of like tilting my head, when he says, you almost ran me over, it almost appears like his understanding, the officers, of being almost run over is someone driving past him. And I take that to the second part, where he says he almost ran him over, where the car's backing up. I don't see the car coming that close that he could have been run over. The second part also is, why wasn't aid rendered quicker? And that's going to be a major problem for this officer if he's charged.
So Terry, we have the voice of the girlfriend several times in those recordings, two different scenes, two different scenarios. Do you think she was accurately describing what she was doing? She said she was just backing up.
Well, you know, here's the question. What was the state of mind? And I think the police officer twice, as we saw in both of those videos, was saying you almost ran me over. And I don't think the car almost ran him over. So I think that they were just trying to get away, not trying to kill the police officer.
And when we come back here on Law and Crime Daily, the trial of a former baseball pro whose defense attorney admitted he used a bat to kill 3 people. Will an insanity defense work? More testimony is right after the break. Let's head now to the trial of a former professional baseball player who admits he used a bat to beat 3 people to death. Terry's here with an update on that case. Terry.
So ex-player Brandon Willie Martin faces 3 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of his father, his uncle, and a security system installer. Prosecutors believe Martin lost his baseball contract and killed out of anger. The defense admits the facts, but says Martin suffers from mental illness. Prosecutors called a 3D reconstructionist who explained the damage done to the skulls of the victims.
Yeah, the facial and cranial anatomy was what I was concerned with.
And so the photographs that was selected and sent to you, you just zoomed in on the head area?
Yes, they were cropped.
So with Mr. Swanson, just briefly explain, I know you've told us the process that you've done from pre-processing, processing, and post-processing. Integrate that into what you did with Mr. Swanson.
Yeah, so some of the photographs that are here on the left side, such as the license photo here, and this photo below it, were used for superimposition. So that was for overlaying of the 3D template skull to these photos to match the anatomy. Some of the photos were used for trauma.
On the cross, defense attorneys questioned who else had access to this witness's research.
There was one person that you spoke to. Is that correct?
Yes.
And her name was Leota Noche Dowdy. Is that right?
Correct.
How many times did you speak to her?
I don't recall, maybe half a dozen.
Did you put your conversations with her anywhere in your notes?
I don't believe so.
When was the last time you spoke to her?
Maybe almost a year ago, probably.
Is she someone that works in this field?
She is a PhD student at the university in this field, in the field of forensic anthropology.
Okay, so she's in a different field than you,
Right.
correct?
Yes.
This morning, you gave me a phone number for her. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Would it surprise you to know that that number is disconnected?
Objection or relevance.
Sustained.
Okay, so Terry, one thing that strikes me with this case is whenever you've got to get somebody on the stand to reconstruct the skulls of people who've been killed with a baseball bat, you're talking gruesome injuries. The question is, does it actually matter when the defense is admitting this is what happened? The question really is the defendant's mental state.
I think that is the question, Aaron. But a lot of times we see prosecutors make a big case out of something they don't have to because they want to make sure that they get this conviction. So they're showing the skulls and they're having this reconstructionist talk about it in detail because that does actually affect what the juror is thinking about, and it makes them want to convict even further.
So, Brian, did the defense score any points with that cross-examination about the number being disconnected and everything?
I'm not sure, but I also don't think this is the place for the defense to score points. I think at this point in time, you just got to sit tight and wait for that penalty phase because, like he's already said, he committed the crime. The question is whether or not he's going to be able to save his life through an insanity defense or some sort of mitigation.
Yeah, Brian, I mean, is there a chance here based on what we've seen thus far in this case?
A chance to win the trial? Ooh, no, there's not a chance to win the trial.
Mitigate the punishment.
Mitigation, I think there's a great chance for it. You have all the facts there. There's all the possibility of saying there is something mentally wrong with this person and he should avoid the death penalty.
And if the jury finds that, then ultimately that's the outcome. A lot of times the defense has to play the long game in cases like this. Thanks a lot for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America, and there is much to discuss.
Hi, I'm Dan Abrams. In the exploding legal and true crime genre, Law and Crime is the only network that has it all.
Good evening and welcome.
This is a complicated case.
Don't really jump to conclusions.
We break down the case of a serial killer.
Another day of drama between both sides.
From multiple live trials daily to original and compelling programming, the Law and Crime Network is everywhere, and we invite you inside the jury box. This is Law and Crime.